Well, let's go back to one of our top stories of the morning, and that is the ongoing Western Cape taxi strike. Cape Town Safety and Security MMC JP Smith joins us now. He is on the line. Good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on the South African morning. There were talks that the Transport Minister was possibly set to meet with Santaco and the City of Cape Town. Do we have any information on when that meeting will take place and what the conversation would likely be about and stem on?
Yes, good morning. I was aware of the conversations yesterday involving the mayoral committee member for transport for the City of Cape Town, Councillor Rob Quintus, and the provincial NEC, Ricardo McKenzie. I did propose to them an option which may assist the situation and which would demarcate the lines between what the city impounds for and what we fine for. This would make explicit what we already practice internally, but I thought it may assist the discussion, and I know that that was presented to Santaco yesterday and that they were happy with that. It was based on the premise that there would be no further violence or destruction of any property or loss of any life. And sadly, last night, one of our law enforcement officers, upon taking other staff home, was the victim of a drive-by shooting and passed away. So I'm afraid that puts us in a situation where we have to today try and understand what the nature of that death was, and if it was at the hands of the potentially of the taxi associations, that law enforcement officer, Quinana, if his death has anything to do with the taxi industry, we will need to think whether any continuation of the discussions with the taxi industry is then in fact viable.
That's devastating news to hear this morning, Mr. Smith. Let's just move on to, the bone of contention and what the issues were leading up to this strike action. Was it simply the impounding of taxis? Were there other issues? Just talk us through those conversations, please.
So there were essentially two issues according to the taxi associations, and I want to say again that I don't believe that these are the actual reasons, and I'll explain why in a moment. Firstly, it was the issue of wanting additional operating licenses on some routes, and on certain contentious routes. The city and the province did an additional assessment of the demands on those routes and made a further 6,000 and something permits available. The first 700 of those permits were immediately made available, and of those, my understanding is over 300 have not been taken up yet. So it makes it doubtful that the issue of the permits is the real reason for this. The second matter was the unhappiness with the level of enforcement, although I will tell you that in the taxi task team meetings, I have attended 3 of the 4 meetings in the last 6 months, we discussed this matter, and in those meetings the taxi leadership themselves cannot or do not make a compelling argument for stopping. They don't even much try, because the truth is they know that the enforcement is required and that enforcement is reasonable. And when you show them the nature of the complaints, the volume of complaints, the nature of the offences, they say in the meetings that they agree that enforcement must take place. So the real contention is whether and in fact, the impoundments happen in terms of the National Land Transportation Act. There's no city bylaw involved. And they happen for offences like driving on the sidewalk, over stop streets, over traffic lights, into oncoming traffic, and so forth. Things that are dangerous and reckless and lead to the kind of horrible accident we saw in Mitchell's Plain some months ago, when everybody said, let's make sure this doesn't happen again and let's do more consistent enforcement. So we are doing more consistent enforcement. We've been doing it for the last 2 years. And the truth is, it is impacting on the industry, and it is forcing them to reconsider their ways, which is what we all want. We want enforcement that is effective and forces the people operating public transport vehicles to take the lives of the occupants in those vehicles, the commuters, seriously, as we do. My goal, I am measured by whether we save lives and whether the road death toll comes down. That's my primary directive. So the contention is what we impound for, and I've said I'm very happy if we delineate that clearly and say we impound for moving violations and not stationary violations, for instance, not parking offences and so forth, because I already know that we don't do that. That there was happiness with yesterday. However, then last night, one of our officers was the victim of a shooting. I'm extremely saddened by that. Young man, 34 years old, and his family utterly traumatized. So this makes it very difficult to believe that the association is not at war and that the leadership of the taxi associations are not in control of their members, in which case is it worthwhile talking to them if they have no apparent control over what their members do? It's unforgivable, and the constant violence is nobody should be defending. I hear people making half-hearted attempts to defend that behavior.
Mr. Smith, with regards to the safety of the community, millions of South Africans use taxis and public transport to commute daily. How are we ensuring that commuters in Cape Town are going to be safe this morning?
We have been doing that since the night of the strike announcement. I mean, the problem arose for starters that the association announced their strike halfway through a day, leaving commuters high and dry without the ability to make alternative arrangements. And for me, that indicates that the concern is not actually about the commuters. It's about strategy to disrupt. They then blockaded roads with cars driving slowly on the freeways, purposely to jam up traffic, causing people to be stuck for hours. That is just needless and cruel, and it's got nothing to do with the interests of the commuters. Similarly, thereafter, we've seen almost immediately the destruction of property in other buses. I think we're on 7 Golden Arrow buses now. That's almost 8.5 million rands worth of damages. So maybe what we're busy with here is economic sabotage by the taxi industry, and that the other reasons stated are fig leaves for what they really want to do. So we've been driving and escorting buses into areas. I saw that happen yesterday. I was out on the street for much of yesterday, and we are, where that is not possible, we are staging areas where people can access public transport on the edges of communities where the attacks on the buses is common. But that's not ideal, because that means commuters have to walk a great deal further.
Mr. Smith, are there any specific areas of concern, perhaps areas that commuters should avoid?
I think the commuters in each community understand very well. Remember, this is not our first strike. These happen every 6 months to a year. And maybe I should also just add at this point that a simple Google search will show you that Cape Town is not the only municipality that impounds vehicles. This happens all across the country. Just for the sake of perspective, I did look this up, and you can readily find many articles about other municipalities doing the same. So it is disingenuous to suggest that this is somehow unique to Cape Town. We may do it with greater intensity and more dedication, again, because we're serious about road safety, but this is not unique to us. So we are protecting the commuters as best we can. There's escort services. That's what those officers were doing yesterday when they were dropped at home by one of their colleagues, and he was tragically murdered by somebody. And today maybe we will get some insight into whether that related to the taxi associations and its leadership.
Okay, well, let's leave it there this morning. We appreciate your time and for the update, Mr. Smith. That was J.P. Smith, the Cape Town Safety and Security MMC, just giving us the latest details with regards to that ongoing taxi strike in the Western Cape, day 3 today. Mr. Smith mentioning that conversations are ongoing and confirming that unfortunately a law enforcement officer was killed in a drive-by shooting last night. Not confirmed whether that is connected to the ongoing taxi strike.